Dune Part 2 is absolutely incredible. It's one of those types of movies that you go to the movies for. One of the most beautiful things about this movie is the scale. We're talking about these ships. We're talking about the worms as well. The sandworms, which were incredible. The movie in the word is epic. And a lot of that credit is attributed to Denis Villeneuve and how well he weaved the story between all of these very intricate and well-rounded characters, especially when you're talking about this intergalactic Game of Thrones that they're doing in this story, right? And the thing that I love about this story is watching all the machinations of these different characters, whether it's Paul Atreides and the Freeman, whether it's Paul's mom, Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, who was absolutely phenomenal in this movie. Her character is just weaving her way through the Fremen people, trying to instill Paul as the Messiah that they already believe him to be. Half of them, that is, and half of them don't. And we see that other characters like Javier Bardem's character, who is essentially a religious zealot who believes already that Paul is this Messiah. We go off planet to House Harkkonen, right, with Vladimir, as well as Fade Rotha, my new favorite character of this series. I'm definitely going to talk more about House Harkkonen a little bit later on. You also have Zendaya. I'm not sure which way to pronounce it, but she, as Shani, is playing this very vulnerable character who's learning how to love, but at the same time is trying to still keep her guard up, and for good reason, because Paul Atreides and the House Atreides and all those people, they're not her people. They're not the Fremen. They're not the people who came along and have lived on this planet watching other houses destroy their planet in order to take the Spaihts, essentially push them out of the way so that they can gain those resources. You have the Emperor, who's playing his long game, played by Christopher Walken. He's not in it a lot, but he's in it enough to be effective. His daughter, played by Florence Pugh, she puts an amazing performance in, and you recognize the little machinations that she's playing at. Now, let's not even talk about, or let's do talk about, rather, the Bene Gesserit.
Who?
Essentially, Dune's version, or I should say Star Wars version, because we know Dune came before Star Wars and Dune influenced Star Wars. The Witches of Dathomir, essentially, of this story, moving the chess pieces on the board around so that they can remain in power and have their chosen Messiah and that bloodline continue through these machinations. It's incredible how well this intergalactic Game of Thrones is being played by each individual character and each individual house in this film. That was my main takeaway from this movie, is the balance that this movie delivers and how many steps this movie takes to getting to the end of this arc of the story. Because the interesting thing that I heard a lot about prior to seeing this movie is some reviewers had said that you don't need to see the first movie in order to enjoy the second movie. Now, do I agree with that? Not much. To an extent, I think that the first movie gives you a very good foundation towards where we're going here, but I really feel like you could have cut the first movie down into maybe an hour and added it to this movie and made this movie, Dune Part 2, which is kind of feels like a Dune Part 1A. I know that's Part 2, obviously. But it kind of feels like obviously the conclusion to Part 1, but this whole thing feels like Part 1. When you get to the end of this movie, you will feel like, okay, this story, this part of the story is officially done. Now we'll be moving to where we're going on from here. Character arcs end. Story arcs end. The introduction of new storylines have begun by the end of this movie. So now, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, they should have probably been combined into one film. That should have been Part 1. And whatever Part 3 is, which I believe we're probably more than likely getting a Part 3, that should have been your Part 2. And I believe that the box office for this movie is going to take off. I know the box office has been in a slump for a long time, but through word of mouth and through ratings and how people are talking about this movie, I'd be shocked if this movie didn't make maybe even $1 billion. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I believe that it deserves it. But let's talk about some of the other things in this movie that I absolutely adored. My favorite characters of both films now are House Harkonnen. The black and whiteness of those characters. Not only am I talking about the black and whiteness of good and evil when it comes to them, because obviously they are the antagonist of the first two parts of this story, but also the black and whiteness of their tactics, how they're very direct. We've used brute force. We attack. We are brutes in a sense, but we're actually very calculated. Not only that black and white, but the black and white of the actual aesthetic of these characters, especially when we get to travel to their home planet and even see a gladiator scene where we meet Feyd-Rautha for the first time. His character is incredibly honorable in a sense, in his own twisted sense, very black and white. Also, that scene, everybody in the crowd, fully white. I mean like chalk white. And then the blacks that they wear to accent themselves, it gives off evil empire. But yeah, man, like the black and whiteness of their character, the black and whiteness of their aesthetic, the black and whiteness of even how they can be manipulated. And you'll see different houses or different factions try to manipulate them and move them in certain ways. And I just love all of those characters. Especially, I'm also going to bring up, we talked about Feyd-Rautha, played by Austin Butler. We talked about Vladimir, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who was incredible in this movie. He was scary as hell in the first movie, especially as he's floating and rising. He's huge and he's just this kingpin type character. But I also want to talk about Bautista, who plays Robin. Not Robin like Batman and Robin, but Robin. I love this because of Bautista's career, where he's played many different roles and tried to set himself apart as a thespian, going from being a wrestler in the WWE and having an incredible career there, but also trying to do other movies like Cabin in the Woods. Who? Or I'm sorry, Knock at the Cabin, which he did last year. I mean, I didn't love that movie, but I loved him in that movie. And just the different types of roles that he's tried to take, where he's not just a brute yelling and things of that nature. I'm here to tell you, he leans into the brute yelling in this particular movie because that's what this movie calls for. And he's great in this film. One other thing, I really want to make this abundantly clear. To the servants and the people who are underlings in House Harkonnen, right? When you're given an order, I would advise that you just follow that order. But what if we don't do that, okay? But sire, did you think about, because you know what's going to, you finna get your throat slit, okay? I keep going back to Star Wars. This is like the equivalent of Darth Vader force choking people out all over the ship when they're failing in Empire Strikes Back.
Apology accepted, Captain Nida.
And if you do, because not that it will help, but if you do, disagree, maybe step back. Maybe take a few steps back.
Hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband.
Because they slitting every servant's throat around here. So just a little word of advice. Just don't do that, please. Step back. Or just do what you're told. That could work. So I love that part of the film. I also loved, let's go back to where there's more color. Let's go back to where the sandworms are. The sandworms are incredible. Now, I know we saw them in the first movie, but in this movie, they get a little bit more character. They become a little bit more of an important part of the story. Paul is needing to prove himself to the Fremen people, and one of the things that he has to do is ride one of the sandworms. Ride, solid ride. Like, he's hanging 10, he's swag surfing on the sandworms, and he has to do that in order to prove himself. And part of the beauty of that scene is learning to tame the beast that's going throughout the planet of Arrakis, and also while he's trying to tame the beast within inside him by avoiding future that he already knows that's going to happen. He's prophesied where he's going to end up, or he's had a vision rather, but he's trying to do everything to avoid it while his mother is actively working against him. Intergalactic, Game of Thrones. Everybody's got chess moves. So yes, I believe this movie is definitely worth seeing in IMAX, because I want to go see it in IMAX. I know some people don't have access to IMAX, and I apologize if that's you, but I just want you to go see it in the best quality that you can see it, because when I talk about scale, I'm talking about big scale, big ships, big sandworms, right? And I sat in the second row. I was way too close. It was way too loud, and I had such a damn good time. I didn't get the Dune popcorn bucket. I can't see myself putting my hand in that thing and not feeling a way about it. So I didn't get a chance to get that. As far as this movie's concerned, let me just give you guys my rating. I'm going to give this movie the incredible, the rare 5 sparks out of 5. I enjoyed the hell out of my time seeing this film. Wish we could fast forward a few years to get to Dune Part 3. I'm willing to wait, especially if waiting means that we get this type of quality. So what did you guys think about the movie? Have you seen it? Are you planning on seeing it? Are you familiar with the books? I'm not. I'm just watching these movies and letting the story unfold for itself. So please, do not spoil the future of this story for me, because I'm enjoying finding out for myself. And I'm not going to read the books because I'm not much of a book reader. And I know that, people have different opinions about certain things being better in the book than better in the movie. And I respect you and I respect that. But respect other people's experiences, please. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Talk to you guys next time.